right, this is Mitch Maley, and we are back with another episode of Punk Rock Politics. I am joined by actor and director Brendan Ragan and climate activist Elsie Gilmore. How you doing, guys?
Doing pretty good, Dennis.
Everybody have a good week?
Not necessarily, but I'm here and I'm alive, and so that's good.
All right, I got to ask you guys something. Sunday, I went out for my normal. Usually, I do a beach walk on Sunday. Bad knee, haven't been able to run. And this time I went down to Bayfront Park in Sarasota, and I saw a rather disturbing image, and not just the unconditional surrender statue, but right next to it. I'm pulling in. It was really, really crowded. And, you know, I was lucky I got a parking place, and there was kind of a guy standing in the parking place next to me. I thought he was just getting out of his car. And apparently he was trying to save a space. And this couple came, and my son and I always joke that the Karen Mobile is a white GMC Denali, right? And sometimes you'll see it as an Escalade if they're up a tax bracket. Sometimes if they're just joining the club, you might just see a regular Tahoe, right? Yukon. But if you see a large premium Chevy SUV, you know, you kind of
assume there's a short haircut
We're
that comes
making
along with it.
Generalizations here. Okay,
there was a
fine.
55-year-old blonde white woman in it, and she wasn't having it. And she got out, and it was these, they sent out like maybe they were from Latin America, and they were like, hey, we're saving these for friends. And then she started with, I don't know where you're from. We don't do that here.
No.
But let me just say, as much as I didn't want to, I was on her side.
Isn't Sarasota like 30% Karen?
This is true. No, but let me ask you guys' take on this, because this is when I know that my
There's
bias
actually
is,
a tax incentive to be a Karen here. That's why we have so many.
the bias here is in the right place. I hate when people do that. Like, is
Well,
that a
of course,
dick move?
you're not supposed to be saving spaces, obviously, but you also, you know, have to.
But do we agree on that? Because these people thought this was completely
Yes.
appropriate. Like,
It depends on
No.
if they were just coming down the aisle and they were
no,
saving it for
it
like
was
2 seconds,
they were on
or
the phone. They're like, my friends are on the way.
no, that's not cool.
It's like, it's a super crowded day. Everybody's hovering in the lot.
Yeah.
You get a spot, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, my friends who didn't get here as early as you did are more important, and they have a friend that's here. So
All right, what's the moral of the story? Because you already insulted the woman and then admitted that it was the other person's
I was
fault.
asking
It's
your
like,
guys'
you're playing the
opinion to make sure I was on the right side here. So it's a dick move to save a spot.
It's a dick move
Yeah.
that you should be allowed to do. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah, I think you should. I think you should be able to save a spot for your friends. Controversial take.
I can't go along with that.
So I wouldn't have went along with it. I would have been like,
also
I'd roll down the
limits-
window and
Here's why.
Yeah.
Because if they were literally just down the row, you'd say, "Oh, my friend's right there." So what's the difference between being down the row and
it
being a few
doesn't
minutes
matter
away?
Well,
whether it's who's in the
because-
space at that
Yeah,
moment. It's a
kind-
public space.
It's
We
kind
all
of
own
a
it.
first come, first
Yeah,
serve
I
know.
basis, Brendan.
And they were there.
No, they weren't. They're on their way. Let me ask you this. You run a theater.
Yeah.
Urban Eye Theater in downtown Sarasota. Shout out.
Thanks for the plug.
Let's say, because I used to hate this at the movies before they had to assign seating.
I know what
You'd
you're
go
gonna
in, crowded night, opening night, and somebody goes, oh no, these are saved.
Yeah.
Our friends are coming.
But that's not quite the same as a vehicle.
Even that's a
parking.
dick move, though. I mean, it's like,
no, that's different.
I got to
In
sit in the
my
front.
mind-
I got here before your friends,
hear
and I've
you.
got to sit down in the front and crane my neck
I hear
because
you.
they didn't. Because you had an expectation
I feel
that
like-
20 of us were going to watch a movie together in the same row.
I feel
you know,
like
okay.
this is an argument that can't be won, and we should move on.
All right.
That happens at Urban Night, by the way, because we have general admission, so people have to come early to get the
Right,
seats.
exactly.
And
Good
people,
point. Just
people
like the
sometimes
movie.
grab seats for their friends. And if other people complain, I always have the same answer. They say, hey, there are some people saving seats in there, and they shouldn't be. And I say, you're right, they shouldn't be.
All right. Well, we got that out of the way. Big week coming up. We've got our big week that's happened. We've had a lot. I think the second most executive orders by this point ever. We had another big one today. President Biden reinstating many of the parts of the Affordable Care Act that were canceled, and then reopening the window for open enrollment at the exchange. So very, very important. But we've had a number of other really, really big and important ones. And I'm not, to put it out there, I'm not a fan of governance by executive orders as a principle, but that's what we've come to. I mean, with this actual, reality that we're in, where you need 60 votes to pass legislation, nobody is working with anyone. We're at utter gridlock, and that's about the only way we move anything at this point.
It's an indictment of two things. And I think it's one is like the brokenness of Congress, the total inability to work together, and also the growing precedent. like starting with the Obama administration, moving into the Trump administration, and now Biden, just like record speed blitzkrieg of executive orders in his first week, it says, yeah, he doesn't have a whole lot of faith that things are going to pass through slowly and effectively like we're used to government working, because they're not even passing slowly or effectively anymore. It's just gridlock.
And just think about it. Trump was reversing things Obama did, and now we're reversing the reversals that Trump did. It's freaking ridiculous.
It's just going to become a new rite of passage for a president if it's an opposite party to just like
There'll
get
just
out
be
the
a
pen.
list of things.
Yeah.
You know, just reverse these things. Okay.
Here's
and
the
then
50 we want
reverse them
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I don't even know what to say about that.
And speaking of the same thing, Mitch McConnell apparently basically threatened that if you get rid of the filibuster and we get control of the Senate in 2022, we're going to erase everything you did.
Yeah.
Yay.
that's where we're at.
That's how I want my legislators to speak.
How about it? Elsie, what was your favorite executive order?
Well, I have a couple, so I'm probably the tree hugger of the group here. So I was really interested in the environmental stuff. Obviously, he rejoined the Paris Agreement, and actually the U.S. is going to host an April summit on the environment, so that's great. But my favorite, because it's very personal to me, was that he again canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, which I actually was arrested protesting in front of the White House.
Wow.
I protested Obama's administration because that's who was president at the time. And so you're welcome, because that still
Now
doesn't
you know
exist.
who to thank for that.
You did it.
Yay.
Nice work.
Other than that, I mean, Trump was pushing the oil and gas leases on public lands, and Biden has put a 60-day sort of moratorium on that. And that's kind of a tricky issue, because that all depends on the Mineral Leasing Act, which kind of guarantees that the government will offer leases every quarter. So I don't really know how that's all going to fall out. And they're already talking about lawsuits. So, but he's trying. I mean, he has an aggressive environmental agenda. And so we'll just...
That has definitely been, I would say, his biggest departure from your typical neoliberal. He has set ambition that goes way beyond Obama's.
And so far, there's nothing concrete. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and,
very important.
The pipeline is fairly concrete. I mean, that stops.
Well, but the pipeline doesn't exactly stop that oil from moving. It just stops it from moving easily and quickly. So otherwise, it moves slowly and possibly more.
You could
dirty.
argue that we would be moving on those federal leases had it not been.
Well, the federal leases, yeah. I mean, that's different. But, you know, and I think he's doing the right thing by emphasizing jobs, because that everyone says if you put any environmental regulations in, you know, it's going to kill jobs. If you try to get rid of fossil fuels, it's going to kill jobs and people will die.
Job killing regulations.
Yes.
Brendan, what was your favorite?
There are several that Biden issued in the first few days that have to do with his commitment to racial inequity, or solving racial inequity, that have really impressed me. So like you said, this is unusual for a neoliberal to come out of the gate so firm and so strong. And I think it's a signal that he knows how destructive the 1994 crime bill was. I don't think we're ever going to get him out and out daily apologizing for such a thing, but I take this as the apology. I think he's understanding now how it contributed to mass incarceration. And so, boom, a ton of racial themed executive orders. First, the Justice Department rescinds the 2018 memo establishing zero tolerance policy at the border, which resulted in the family separations. He's phasing out the use of private prisons, which is gigantic.
Huge.
That's really enormous.
That's probably the biggest and most significant of the bunch. Beyond that, he's revoked the restriction on diversity and inclusion training. He overturned the Muslim ban. He tossed out this ridiculous 1776 commission, which was like a rewriting of American history, just plainly whitewashed. And he's poised, from what I understand, to issue executive actions placing a limit on the transfer of military equipment to local law enforcement.
Thank God.
Yes, the militarization of our police.
Didn't he also do something with housing? Didn't he reverse something that Trump got rid of? Or had to do with fairness?
Yes, it has to do with the Fair Housing Act and redlining and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, yes. And listen, he leaned on the African-American vote a lot.
Big time.
He was upfront with, you guys saved my butt, and
I have your back.
Yeah, yeah.
And to take such a huge step in so many different directions, not towards any one particular community, but to say this is all about equity was impressive to me. I was surprised that he did so much so fast.
Very much. And I'll go with not necessarily in order, but what I was really impressed with that I did not think I would see from an established Democrat is he is pulling back the last moment arms sales that Trump approved for Saudi Arabia.
I didn't know he could do
great.
that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And this is big because a lot of people don't realize that and I've written about this extensively, we have a really difficult position to explain when we talk about the so-called axis of evil in North Korea and we talk about Iran. We have a lot to explain when we say, but we're really good friends with Saudi Arabia, who leads the world in public beheadings.
You mean when we banned Muslims from coming to this country, except from certain countries?
Right. Oh, the day after 9/11, skies are closed, except. So now,
and Trump was, by the way, totally willing to just be the bonehead there and be like, well, we have big deals with them. Like he just said the quiet part out loud.
Do you remember that press conference where he was showing the pictures and the crown prince was sitting there and Trump is like showing these cutout pictures of like tanks and the prince is just like, yeah. And he's like, oh, and look at this one. We're selling you this one. Do you like this one?
Yes, we buy
it's
those.
Like a little kid with Tonka trucks. It was awful. But no, the thing is that a lot of people don't get is that Saudi Arabia is really, really important to American economics in the sense that, they control OPEC. They made the deal a long time ago to make the dollar the de facto currency that oil is traded in. That is an enormous fiscal advantage that America has in that, when our trade deficits are rectified, we're paying in our own currency. It also gives a tremendous demand for U.S. dollars all over the world. There's a good reason to hold on to U.S. dollars because you can buy the most important thing to most economies with U.S. dollars, the petrodollars we call it. The other thing is because Saudi Arabia then has accumulated so many U.S. dollars, they own about 12% of the entire American economy. The entire stock exchange, about 12%.
And is that not a security risk?
It's an enormous security risk. When things happen, like they are in the midst of a genocide against the Yemen on this border war that is completely illegal, where we're supplying weapons for them to kill these poor indigenous women and children in a real what should be it's an act that should have Americans outraged, but we don't even hear about it. But this ongoing border strife there that we've been supporting, it's really one of the hardest things for America to defend in terms of the good we do throughout the world. So to see them be willing to finally say, okay, we're going to hold Saudi Arabia accountable, that's really, really huge.
Is stopping a sale really holding them accountable, though? Or is that the beginning of walking towards that?
I think it's the first time we ever said, we're not just going to, bend our knee.
Take the money, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not even so much take the money. I don't think the money really has anything to do with it. It's keeping that relationship where it is. Now, you could argue, and a lot of people on the right wing would, that all of that drilling, all that fracking, and all those dirty, nasty ways that we became quote unquote energy independent in that sense, where we're a net energy exporter now, from largely because of fracking gas and oil, has allowed us to be more independent.
Well, and on that same note, Joe Biden's got this whole bring manufacturing back to America. And, we have less pollution because we exported all our pollution along with our manufacturing to China.
Yes.
So that would be bringing some of that pollution back if we were going to open up hundreds, thousands of factories here. So that's something that I think about too.
You raise a great point in the sense that when the climate opponents that you run into always say, well, what good does it do if the United States curbs its emissions and China is still the large? Well,
right.
What you just said, China is actually polluting for us.
Yes, exactly, 100%.
And which we're also having a real big problem, a little bit off track, but we're having a real big problem right now that we don't really recycle plastic anymore. So much of it is not getting recycled because it turns out it was never getting recycled in the first place. Yeah. It was getting sent to poor third world countries like Malaysia, and they were burning it into the air, and then enough people got sick and died that they said, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. And now it's piling up in American recycling centers. So our cleanliness sometimes comes at the expense of other people.
Yes, I try not to think about that so I can sleep at night.
Sorry.
So you're saying our recycling is a lot like of most of our other products. Looks good on the outside, but when you look inside, it's actually terrible.
I'll give you an example. The worst one, nobody should be recycling glass. because it doesn't get recycled. So around here in Manatee County, we collect the glass, okay, and then we take it to all the way down to Venice, I think is the last one, or Englewood has the last glass recycling, and all they do is crush it, and they put it in a landfill, and they call it liner to keep the seeping coming down.
Oh, really? Because I would have thought glass would have been easy to
me
turn
too.
into something else.
It's not. It's not real cost effective.
Can we go back to before I knew that? Because I really liked recycling glass.
Here's the part that's really interesting. One time I was talking to someone with waste management, and I was trying to get that question answered, and they basically kept saying, there's a demand in the market for glass recycling, and we're satisfying that demand. I was like, but you're not actually, like, don't you think that the footprint of all those trucks going around and collecting all that glass, driving it all the way down to South Sarasota County, crushing it up and then sending it back to landfills, isn't that like a net loss? There's a demand in the economy to recycle glass, and we're filling that demand. Like, he was like, yes, you're right. Shut up. Nobody wants to hear this.
I gave you the stock answer.
Does this mean we don't need to wash our single,
use
all our
plastics?
Well, when you put all the plastics together, and then just put it in the same container, because I was in a relationship and he was really mad. Like, he was really peeved that he had to wash. He said he was washing the trash before putting it in the recycling.
Well, that's the unfortunate truth is if you don't, it doesn't get recycled either. You basically have to wash it as good as a dish, or else it usually is called spoiled.
But if it's not getting recycled anyway, then why do you have to wash it?
And another piece of bad news, one of the other things that was being successfully recycled for years and years was cardboard, because it was getting shipped all the way to China to be compressed to make all that crappy particle board so that you could buy a junk piece of furniture in Walmart, right?
Or IKEA.
Right.
I'm starting to get the idea that we're going to look like Idiocracy, where there's just piles of trash on the street, just falling into the street.
The great trash avalanche of 2,500.
I was having a good day until like 5 minutes ago.
All right, let's get off recycling so we can all sleep tonight. Okay, let's go next. Before we get into the next segment, we have the news rundown. We had so much happening this week that we thought there were a few things that we've got to make you aware of. The one is, have you guys heard of the football player for the Seattle Seahawks?
Oh, yeah, that was arrested.
Yeah. And he apparently choked his girlfriend because she refused to bow to him.
Yeah, he asked her to kneel before him.
I bet he still gets to play.
He was released, but I'd be surprised if he's not picked back up.
As long as he doesn't kneel during the
national anthem,
he should be good.
Good one.
I will say that the photos are bad. I don't know if you've seen the photos.
Ooh, of her beat up.
Of her beat up are bad.
But remember that time that guy like kicked his girlfriend in an elevator? Didn't he end up playing again?
Oh, yeah, he's still playing.
Oh, my God.
You mean Ray Rice? No, Ray Rice never played again.
Not Ray Rice. I'm sorry. The other guy.
Tyreek Hill broke his son's arm, and he got scooped right back up again. But
having a banner year for the Chiefs right now.
Sure is.
From what I hear, I don't watch football.
I feel so much better than when we were talking about recycling now.
There we go. There's evil everywhere, Elsie. His name is Chad Wheeler, and he's no longer with the team following accusations that he strangled his girlfriend unconscious because she refused to bow. And wow, you're alive, he allegedly said when his girlfriend regained consciousness after the assault, according to a police report. He was very shocked that she'd made it through his strangulation. So this is what you get when you juice up giant men, put them in spandex, and let them give each other CTE for a living, and then pay them tens of millions of dollars to do so, and pat them on the back all the time, tell them what a great job they're doing. They do start to feel probably like kings that should be bowed to. So I think we probably have a big future in as athletes get bigger, faster, and smash each other in the head with greater force. I think we will see more bowing and choking incidents. That's my prediction.
Maybe we could just teach women not to go out with them.
That would be true, but that goes back to a deep level of biology that we won't even get into. Another great one, Leon Black, the hedge fund manager. Turns out he gave Jeffrey Epstein even more money.
Oh, no.
It's close to $200 million at this point, about $183 to $187 million. He was the CEO of Apollo, and he said that it was for tax advice.
Was this recently? Because I'm not sure he's really dead.
Well, it was over the course of a few recent years before his death.
Tax advice.
Before his alleged
hundreds
suicide.
of millions of dollars for tax advice.
What advice could save you more than $200 million?
Oh, he said it saved him billions. $2 billion
Sure
was his. He would not go into detail but he said it saved him billions. We have
Saved him enough money to get Jeffrey Epstein murdered in prison.
We have another effort to have Citizens United removed via constitutional amendment. Now, this has been brought up every Congress since 2011. Hasn't gone anywhere. I would love to see it go somewhere, so I'm glad that we're still flying that flag because that's as close to a silver bullet of ending this madness as we can get. We also have Washington, D.C. The move for statehood is back.
Yes.
Right? Now, here's a powerful graphic I got this week. Wyoming has 578,000 people and is 92% white. It has 2 senators. D.C. has 705,000 people and is 46% black. It has 0 senators. Pretty good argument. What do you think, guys?
I think it is.
I don't think that there is a good argument against D.C. being a state other than racism and Republicans just not wanting to give 2 Senate seats to the Democrats.
Yeah,
Ding,
it's
ding,
going
ding,
to completely
ding.
come down to partisanship.
That's it.
And,
Yes.
it might take a supermajority or something before that happens.
It already has more population than 2 states.
2 states.
It would not be the smallest state.
What is the other one? South Dakota?
I think it's
Vermont.
Vermont.
Vermont. So you have the other interesting aspect of that came up during the whole Capitol riots was there is no one who can activate the D.C. National Guard other than the president.
Oh, yeah.
So the mayor can't, and there's no governor. So
And it seems like we're already preparing for our next insurrection, so it might be good to get a local government there in place.
Did you get a tip from
No.
QAnon?
threat level is up.
No, I'm just saying, look at the way that we're dealing with this one. It's not too great. It feels like we're just opening the door for another one to happen in a few years.
Now, what about this one? Our senior, I would say, because they're both coming in as freshmen, but the more well-known of our 2 QAnon Congress people, Marjorie Taylor Greene, got in trouble for a couple things this week. So we found out that she was pushing the Fazel drip conspiracy theory. Now,
I don't even know what that is.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, and you guys are going to love it.
Oh my
I
God.
would be able to show you a video on Punk Rock Politics YouTube channel that explained how crazy and insane this was. However, it was not only our most popular and most shared viral video, it was taken down.
Oh, no. Copyright issues?
No.
Too offensive?
No.
But I thought it was
problem?
like
I think a bot must have scooped it up because it said Fazel drip in it, but I was explaining how insane this was.
Oh.
So what this is that there is supposedly it was on Abdina Human's hard drive. So if you remember, she was an assistant to Hillary Clinton, Anthony Weiner's wife, and it was not the same hard drive that he was apparently sending dick pics while he was in bed with his kid to his girlfriend, but on a different hard drive she had, there was supposedly a video of Hillary Clinton draining the blood of a child and then cutting off the child's face and wearing it as a mask.
Oh,
That makes total sense.
Right?
I think that definitely
This was
exists.
right in with the whole, like, it's about as popular as the Comet Pizza,
Pizzagate.
Yeah, it's on that level. So she supposedly had posts that were spreading this story, and then as well as liking posts suggesting that Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats would be murdered.
And videos
Should I-
came out of her harassing David Hogg.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the third one.
Should
It's
I-
been a bad week for her.
Should I ask why it's called Fazel drip?
I don't know. That was supposedly
Okay.
That's like the name of the
The
theory?
code name or
Was it Mr.
that
Fazel?
was supposedly the name of the video. I don't know why it was called that, but that was like the file's name was the Fazel drip video.
I see.
And the other one that was closely tied into it was the adrenochrome, that they were draining adrenochrome, which
Strong QAnon folklore.
which
just
only comes from a scene in Hunter S. Thompson's book where he makes it up and fictionalizes that it's a psychedelic drug, which it is not. It has no properties.
I think they should take all these theories and make their own Bible, and that would be it would be like, Hubbard, all the fantasies that they have in their head, and then they can form their own religion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it should
You
just
said
be,
they were already paying like Scientology, so it sounds
are.
like they're headed in the same direction.
Yeah. It should just, go right to being a online like LARPing game.
Yes, yes.
let's call it what it is. Let's not-
Unfortunately, the LARPing game moved into the Capitol.
Yeah. As soon as they
So they
got
moved
their-
to expel her
gear
from
out.
Congress, by the way, Green.
Who did?
One of the members of Congress, I can't remember who it is
Because she
now.
also got committee assignments.
Yeah, I know.
Afterwards,
From the Republicans.
what were they?
On education.
Education, of
Oh,
course.
education.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Well,
the
she had a
same
lot to
week.
say to David Hogg about, what happened
Education.
in his school. And,
Yeah.
accused him of being a crisis actor in the video and said he was being paid millions of dollars by George Soros.
I don't know how you
Yeah.
get to keep your job after that.
Well, there's a lot of that going around. A lot of that going around. But listen, here's the question. Is this, now, come on, have we gone peak insanity? This has to be what it looked like when the Nazis were like first getting seats in government pieces.
Don't ever say it can't get crazier.
No. I'm saying it. This seems like the start of like,
Yes.
oh my God, these people are in the halls of like they're not out. Like back then, she was following a kid with a cell phone complaining that I can't go in and tell Congress what I think about my gun rights, but you get the voice and get this. Well, she got her voice.
Yeah. She was a provocateur who now has a vote in Congress.
If she gets to keep her job, I don't know what that says about America.
Well,
I mean,
all
Trump
jokes
was
aside,
president. So.
Kevin McCarthy has a choice here. Like,
Yes.
he could put this down. Meanwhile, he's visiting Trump in Florida, so he could care less. But the Republicans really have a strong choice here. Do we just sort of shrug and allow this kind of crazy to exist in some of our most sacred governing bodies? Or do we actually take a stand against crazy because crazy doesn't win elections?
But
Or
what about
does
the
it?
Or does
last
it?
4 years, though? They're going to
Yeah.
now take a stand against crazy?
No,
I mean,
I don't have great faith that they will. But the question is,
Well, I think we got our answer.
this is our inflection point.
I think we got our answer with that vote on the whether it's constitutional to impeach Trump. They're betting very clearly. They're betting that there's more harm in trying to go against any of these Trumpian type issues than there is profit in getting rid of them.
Yep. I think there will be more than 55 votes when it finally comes to impeachment. I don't think there will be 67 or anywhere near it. But yeah, there are so many senators who do not want to have that choice. They don't want
Yes.
to make the choice. They don't want to
They
say.
want him gone. In fact,
Yeah.
I think Republicans want him gone more than Democrats do in that
Yeah.
sense because they have the more to fear from it. Like
But they don't-
they'd like to get back to business as usual.
They do not want to have to come out and say it publicly and
Right.
piss off his voters. They'd rather say, it's an unconstitutional issue. I don't want to
My hands are tied.
Yeah.
So I heard rumors that he was thinking of starting a political party, but then I saw something that said he did. Did he try to?
No, what he started doing was he's got something like was it $77 million from the Stop the Steal account mostly that is still there that he can now spend by promoting different people, and he's already playing in elections. So he is going out there and actively punishing because he can't just put the money in his pocket without going to jail. So he's like, I've got to spend it on something. Okay, punish my enemies. So he's out there actually trying to advocate for anybody who's running against someone who didn't support Stop the
that
Steal.
explains why McConnell has been so well behaved
Yes.
lately.
And
Yes.
I heard Trump actually decided we're more effective if we stay in the Republican Party. Because I think they do want to primary people. They want to threaten people. And you don't do that with a third party. You do it with like a Tea Party-esque
Yes.
wing of a party. So he's not
And
creating
he
a party.
thumbs the eye a lot better if he says, I'm just going to steal yours.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So he's staying a quote unquote Republican, but it's as this fringe wing of Patriot Party or whatever he's going to call it.
I see.
So yeah, that's where we're at. All right, next segment, let's get on to the cabinet. So we've seen some good and bad things. I'm going to start with you, Brendan. What was your favorite cabinet appointment? What one were you most impressed with?
I think the strongest progressive victory outside of just the general feeling of it being the most diverse cabinet ever, even though there are very many centrists and neoliberals in those diverse roles, was Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior. First ever Native American to serve in the role, and immediately is, on these issues like with the Keystone Pipeline and issues with the environment, is taking a strong stand. And it's like, watch out, corporate America, because Deb Haaland is coming straight into this job with an emphasis on preserving lands. And I think it was the one cabinet member that progressives pushed really strong for that actually broke through. That was like a universally progressive choice from the very beginning. They had someone picked out for all roles, and one is better than zero in terms of like universal support. But it was a very impactful and symbolic one, I think. So I'm going with Holland.
Agreed. Elsie?
My favorite was Janet Yellen, who will now be the first woman to lead the Treasury Department. And as we know, women are usually the ones that, do the bookkeeping for the household. So, she probably knows what she's doing. But she actually has a history of advocating for using economic policy to close racial and gender gaps, which she says rightly affects the whole economy. And she also is pushing for climate policy, good climate policy, because again, she says bad climate policy is bad for the economy. So I really like the way she thinks about things. I mean, that's logical, the neoliberals don't think like that. They're just money, money, money. And they think it's cheaper to, they don't even think about it, but in their mind, they must think it's cheaper to deal with it on the back end than the front end, which of course is completely false.
Yeah, I love her. I love her perspective on using her position to do good being the first goal, and then using money to do it rather than just saying, let's get the economy in order. She sees the greater good and greater purpose.
Well, and she sees the things that are hurting it right now, that other people tend to ignore.
Yes. From somebody who, economics is near and dear to my heart, that's about as progressive as you're going to get. Now, she's made some statements in the past, with the deficit hawk type answers that sometimes those are, I read them as things you have to say to be able to move forward because there are so many deficit hawks in both the right and the left that don't understand economics at all, and they're not interested in Janet Yellen, who is an extreme expert because she's the first person to have been the Fed chair, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, and the Treasury Secretary. Nobody's ever held all three of those, and she's brilliant.
And I'm not saying she's going to be good. You can still want to do the right thing and do it in the wrong way, So
yes, but what I'm saying is I've always read from her. She's as progressive as you can be in economics, and I've said this before. We have not allowed the field of economics to adjust to the post-Bretton Woods system yet, and we still force economists to say things that they know don't make sense, and they often contradict themselves then when they're asked direct questions. What I will say is her husband is also an economist, and he's extremely progressive. Oh. So that made me feel more comfortable because it's like their dinner table conversations.
So she's a Trojan horse for progressivism, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Maybe. Could be. But no, I was pleased as well. There are other people that maybe I would have picked ahead of her, but the list is not long. And like I said, I don't think anyone that I would have put ahead of her would have had a snowball's chance in hell of getting.
Yes, so only 15 Republicans voted against her. So her confirmation was very bipartisan.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the bad parts of the cabinet. I am not really pleased with how much corporatism is still there. We still have this revolving door of being made very, very wealthy by helping very, very wealthy people become even more wealthy and then rotating back into government.
Yeah, who got head of agriculture?
Vilsack, Mr. GMO, Monsanto himself.
Yeah, that's my least favorite.
I would go, I'd go one higher than that. I don't like Tony Blinken in that position. Not saying he's a bad person or anything like that, but you're talking about someone who just rotated in from what they call it. I have it here, West Exec. He had this. These are dirty. These firms called strategic consulting firms. They're popping up everywhere. They don't have to register as lobbyists. It's a loophole around that. And they say they don't lobby, they strategically consult you on what's happening in Washington. And how they do that is by talking to people in Washington, but we're not necessarily talking on your behalf. So we consult you based on what we know about them that you should do type thing. So Blinken started this one West Exec when he rotated out of government last time. And it's called West Exec because it is on Western Executive Avenue or whatever it is, the street that is literally connected to the Capitol. To the West Wing. So they're marketing their access to the next administration. And, I wasn't really, really excited about that. And they did a lot of work for the military industrial complex in helping them get better contracts, get more money. And that kind of, hey, these are good guys, these are good companies, they've done well by me, and hey, we've got to keep the country safe, so let's do well by them type of thing is just perpetual. And I don't like to see that. I really didn't like Avril Haines as director of national intelligence. Of course, she's the former national or deputy national security advisor and deputy director of the CIA in the Obama administration. And she was the architect of the disastrous drone program that killed, hundreds of innocent civilians. Avril Danica Haines, I would have taken Avril Lavigne over her, to be honest. And I'll admit her music is garbage, but she's never killed anyone with a drone. And I don't think her songs have killed anybody either. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I would feel more comfortable. So that revolving door part.
What about Mr. Austin?
Same thing. So you got a guy who was just made, Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, just minted as a millionaire by Raytheon, the third biggest defense contractor in the country, and was also involved. He had his own Pine Island Executives, which is another strategic consulting firm, which was helping people get rich. So, this, the idea that you should just have been made a millionaire by Raytheon, that's a tough pill to swallow.
How many millions? Because 1 million is, if you live in California, it's really not that much money. So it really depends on where you are, how many millions. I'm just saying. It's all relative. Like $100
million
millionaire.
for Raytheon. I don't know what he had before that. But that was a quick turnaround just as a board member. Not to mention when he made off his strategic consulting, just as his compensation as a board member, not an executive, not a CEO, just a board member, $1.4 million in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it reminds you that boards of directors and Washington is like the Venn diagram of those two circles is virtually one circle.
Well, I hope he can still do some good. I like that he's getting the military to assess their sexual harassment prevention programs, because that's a huge problem. And I have girlfriends who were in the military, and I have heard from them, and it's just
former Army captain myself, and I will be the first person to tell you I've written about it. There is a rape crisis in the military. You are about 2.5 times more likely as a female to get raped if you enlist to defend our country than you are just walking down the street as a civilian. So that is an absolute shame, and we have this putrid system within the Uniform Code of Military Justice in which the units themselves are investigating and they decide whether something gets elevated. It almost never does. And it's usually, morale, and we haven't in 2 stories, and everything's swept under the rug. And then a lot of times these people have to continue to serve with their rapist when they don't get justice. So it's an awful thing. I've written about it. It's gone through several administrations. Nobody has done anything about it. And it's one of the largest injustices, and as a veteran, I'm ashamed of it.
On the other side of the coin, while we're on the military and executive orders, Biden did lift the ban on trans military members serving in our military. So I think that was a small victory that happened early on, and because there's been this deluge of executive orders, we didn't talk about that as much as we thought.
Let's talk about that though for a second. As a former military guy, here was the problem, and this is why Obama was resistant to that, and it's also why Chelsea Manning got her pardon. The problem is, if you allow that service and then they are entitled to government health care, and then you classify gender dysphoria as a disorder, people are going to join the military en masse as the easiest free way to get gender reassignment surgery.
I don't know. I know how Army recruiters used to work, so I don't feel so bad about that. I'm sorry.
Well, I just mean from a practical standpoint. Absolutely.
But they're still recruits, and they still have to be in there and serve their term and whatever.
But what you're effectively saying, though, is you're creating this loophole and saying, in this one sense, we may have to, anybody who comes in and immediately tells us this, we may have to pay for them to get gender reassignment. And
I think it's okay.
I'm fine with it.
Unless you think it's you have the opposite argument, which is that you feel like people who don't have access are going to end up serving in the military because it's.
But people do that now who can't afford education.
Right.
So what's,
right.
And I think that's terrible because it's like the army of the poor, right?
Sure.
Yes.
And I'm saying all of those things, I think they're backward ways to approach a problem. I don't have a problem saying, let's look at a national health service that provides that service.
Right.
I'm just saying that I'm never in favor of saying, let's create a loophole to solve a problem we're not solving otherwise, and then we'll solve it in a real inefficient
But
way.
yes, no, I think everyone who joins the Army should do it because they want to be in the Army and not because they're poor or need, gender reassignment surgery. I think they should only ever do it because they really, really want to.
All right. The last thing
By the way, we say gender affirming surgery.
Gender affirming.
Yes.
Okay.
Just have to get that out so everyone knows that we are woke. But also because it's the right thing to say, honestly. Yes.
All right. So my other big problem with it is the big transition in terms of where the real kind of problem with corporatism in the cabinet comes is we're no longer in the Goldman Sachs era, we're in the BlackRock era. So we've now got several BlackRock alumni coming in to, this is the world's largest asset management company with nearly $8 trillion worth of assets under its control. It owns a stake in 5% or more of 5% or more in nearly 98% of firms in the S&P 500.
Oh my
including
God.
Apple, Microsoft, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, list goes on. Owning 5% of a company's share is enough to give any shareholder, a huge amount of influence. And when you're talking about the vast majority of the whole Fortune 500, they are moving a lot of important assets. And when you have these people circling into government, that's problematic.
Agreed.
Yes, I agree. I have nothing to add.
So I'd like to see that end. And that takes us into our new segment. Listen, I haven't gotten you a real one yet. So
let's have a jingle.
I'm going to give you a bumper, but it's going to be a mystery bumper because I don't know which one I'm giving you here.
Oh, no.
I have some loaded in. Let's try this one. No, that's not.
Oh, that was a
rim shot.
Rim
Yeah.
shot.
Maybe. Hold on.
That would have been
little
great
too
for your
eerie.
UFO segment.
Oh, if I only had known it was in there.
I'll take it. I'll take applause
Take
anytime.
applause?
As a
else we
theater
got?
guy, I'll
Thank
take
you for the
applause.
Better than last.
We'll save that
Okay.
one for you later.
Wait, that was
rim shot again.
Yeah.
That might be all.
Oh,
That's a pretty good one.
Explosion.
Heck yeah, all right.
Okay. Yeah,
let me
ready.
take you in on that one. Ready? Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Brendan's Bad Take of the Week.
That's right. Welcome to our first ever installment of Brendan's Bad Take of the Week. This is going to be an equal opportunity spitball every week, both sides of the aisle. Anybody who deserves it is going to get a bad take listing right here on our show. But first of all, we're going to start with Nikki Haley. Probably won't be her only time on this list. So I'm going to take what I think is like the cringiest or most eye-rolling quote of the week. And
For audience members who don't know who Nikki Haley is.
yes, the former ambassador to the UN for the Trump
And
administration.
governor of South Carolina, correct?
I think so.
Yes.
And I would say most significantly, a 2024 presidential
Leading
hopeful.
candidate probably
Yes.
for the Republican nomination.
Very much so.
Oh dear.
Has done an excellent job of straddling the Trump and establishment Bush era Republican line.
Well, just you wait. So on Monday on Fox News, Nikki Haley got on and she said the following: "We should not want to go back to the Republican Party before Trump. We gained a lot of people who were unheard, unseen, many of whom had just been misunderstood. We want to keep them in the party. But the reality is we lost a lot of women. We lost a lot of college-educated voters." Then she rambled about free speech and censorship for a while, and then she said Trump's actions were not his finest leading up to the insurrection, and what happened on January 6th was, quote, "not great." So
Insurrection is not great.
not great. And 9/11 was a minor inconvenience.
Right.
So yes, the end of this is the most ridiculous part where she says the insurrection was not great. She's trying to sweep it under the rug and say that he doesn't deserve to be impeached for inciting this insurrection, which I found hilarious. But I think the part that shows this unbelievably stunning lack of self-awareness is this quote where she says, "Hey, we brought all these great people into the party and we shouldn't go back to the Republican Party before Trump, but we lost a lot of women and college-educated voters." It's like the very description of why they lost them was because the Republican Party before Trump allowed them to feel comfortable in the party, and they didn't have such a giant moral deficit. So to say both of those things in one sentence made it today's bad take of the week.
I agree.
Wah, wah.
Oh, I'll get these right. I was trying to give you the applause. All right, but that brings in a big question for the Republican Party, and I've mentioned this before, but what we're witnessing right now from a political scientist perspective is fascinating in that this is the fastest realignment between parties in modern history, in that the Republicans have won the working class, which the Democrats have had for so long, and then the Democrats have won the white-collar, upper-income suburbs that have voted Republican for so long. So big change there. And then the question becomes, how do you get a majority? So the Republicans used to wink and nod to the crazies out in the fringe and say, where else are they going to go? We'll give them some coded language once in a while. And we'll rely on them mostly to like vent about how bad Nancy Pelosi is and Hillary and all that stuff. And then we'll give some like, denouncements of the worst stuff they say. And then Trump was more like, no, say that louder, say that louder.
It's like they're narrowing the party down to just those people. Those people are very loyal, right? And they're not, they're a little unhinged. And
well, Trump's overall approval rating among Republicans has gone up since the insurrection.
But does that include like people who left the Republican Party?
Registered Republicans. So it doesn't matter how they voted. Most of them didn't leave the party to vote for Biden. They voted as Republicans for Biden. So they are more sympathetic to him now than they were just before the election, with a dip around the insurrection. And that's it. So he has not paid much of a political price at all for what happened at the Capitol.
And that's why you have people like Nikki Haley, who is a credible front-running candidate for the Republican Party in 2024, saying crazy things like this, like, well, we lost some people because Trump was nuts and lied all the time and was a horrible human being, but we shouldn't go back to what it was like before him because this is better for us. She actually said, this is better. We're better off with the people who are roused to vote for Trump. But the problem is, anytime Trump has not been on the ballot, the turnout has not been great.
No, that is not translating.
So embrace Trump all you want. But if we're voting for Nikki Haley and Josh Hawley in 2024, and you expect all these people to turn out and vote,
it would absolutely require Trump's hands-on campaigning for them, which is, I think, what he's counting on. He wants to be a kingmaker, I think, now.
We'll see if he'll be busy, I think.
He may be busy trying to make sure he doesn't drop the soap. Next segment, let's move on to my favorite story of the week, my favorite story in a long time, because we're going to talk about a little bit of economic justice through injustice. I love it. The Redditors who screwed over big Wall Street hedge funds by who were trying. So let's explain a little bit what happened here. We have for a very, very long time, there is a ridiculous amount of generated manufactured wealth that comes from nowhere in terms of adding value to the economy, that is just engineered through perpetually cheap money that very wealthy people have access to, that they can borrow and then leverage to engineer fake returns, meaning that they're not driven by profits or added value, by manipulating markets. And one of the ways that large firms do that is that they take positions, whether it is front running, which is taking a position in which you're going to be long on a stock and you're going to predict that its value is going to go up, and then you're going to do stuff to help that perception. Like, for example, if you found a penny biotech stock and you said, you start a whisper campaign, I hear they're working on a cure for cancer, and you dump a bunch of money into it and the price goes up and then the cure never comes and you've gotten out long before that, a bunch of people lose money. That's front running. What they were doing was shorting, which was taking a short position and saying, I don't think this stock is going to be worth much coming up soon. And then they go out and start a whisper campaign, and really, it's not a whisper campaign, because what these large institutions do is they dominate the conversation on CNBC, on Fox Business, and all these different networks, on all these different magazines and website, Forbes, everything, and they give their expert analysis on why this stock's not going to do well. And
can we just talk about how sad that's the way our stock market works?
That happens all the time. And the wealthy, and when you look at the change in wealth stratification, that is one of the driving forces to it. Is they have all these mechanisms that shouldn't be legal or add nothing to liquidity or any reason we're supposed to have publicly traded stocks. And it happens every day. Now, what a bunch of Redditors did was on this one forum where they looked at, and what's really changed here is all this electronic data that's so instantly available and the reduction in barriers for fast trading for an individual small person. So now all of a sudden you have these apps and different things where a person could behave like an institutional trader. And then you have all these places where they can come together like subreddits and say, hey, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? Just like these Wall Street firms do. So when they started looking and saying, who are they taking short positions on? And then started looking and saying, is there any reason? Like, do they have serious problems within their company? No, none at all. It's business as usual at GameStop. I wonder what they're doing. So they went and they took long positions on it. And they basically front ran it without really like coming up with a bad reason. They came right out and said, here's what's happening. Here's how we're going to change it. And we're not only going to make a few bucks on it, we're going to make them lose billions. And
literally billions.
And so did you see Robinhood is being sued now because they halted trading, and all these people are like, you just screwed me out of a bunch of money.
Yes, that's another big part. So what instantly starts happening is the institutional traders and their talking heads on all these networks start crying about this. And you had a few people, you had Mark Cuban, you had the Winklevoss twins, a couple people on saying, what's the problem? Where was the outrage when they were shorting the whole entire real estate market?
That's
subprime
economy.
bonds? Yes. Where was the outrage? Where was the outrage of these institutions when they do it every day? Who was defending?
Who went to jail for that?
Zero people.
Some people are going to get hurt at GameStop. Who was defending them when they were shorting them? Who was defending the worker and the person that manages one, and the regional manager, when they were trying to tank their company just to make a few bucks off of it?
It wasn't TD Ameritrade and Robinhood, I'll tell you that
Sure
much.
wasn't.
So they ended up taking GameStop and some of the other stocks that this Reddit subforum this subreddit forum was targeting, and they took them off the exchanges so you can't. So to me, it's sort of like these bullies, these three bullies, have been going around to the schoolyard just pummeling their classmates because they're bigger and stronger and they have lots more money. And finally, all of the students, 100 students, all got together and said, hey, if all of us target one bully at one time, we can totally kick their ass. And it happened, and the bully went straight to the principal.
Yep.
They were like, no, this is not fair. This is not fair to coordinate against us.
Bullies punch down.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, and so manipulating the stock market is only allowed for billionaires. Is the lesson here?
Yep.
That's it. So, and that's the kind of rigged casino economy we have. That is what happens every day. And when people say, don't punish us for our success by taxing money out of the economy and our wealth, this is the wealth they're talking about. They're not talking about a company making a return. In fact, they're talking about choking the life out of a company who's making a return because they can squeeze a few nickels between it on their last gasping breath. And it's disgusting. And it's a big part of what's wrong with the economy in this country. And it's a big part with what's wrong about the division of resources in this country. And no one does anything about it until an average everyday person wants to get in on the same game.
And it created one of the most remarkable Twitter exchanges I've ever seen in my entire life, where AOC comes out and says, hey, I'm on the Financial Services Committee and we should have a hearing about this because this is not allowed. You should not be able to manipulate the market, and you should not be able to decide when retail traders are able to buy and sell. This is wrong. And Ted Cruz, of all people, retweeted it and said agreed. So everyone's brains were exploding because Ted Cruz and AOC were agreeing on something. And instead of like taking the olive branch, which she should not have, AOC responds like, hey, I'm willing to partner with anyone in the GOP except for you because you tried to have me killed 3 weeks ago. So if anyone else wants to join me on this, I'd be happy to, but you should sit this one out, Ted. So I thought that was hilarious.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you for joining us. A reminder, you can get more at punkrockpolitics.com. Punk Rock Politics, always with an X, on YouTube. And we will be back next Friday. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
That was the wrong bumper. God, I'm killing it this week.